Peyton Watson came into UCLA as a five-star prospect and a McDonald's All-American. Things didn't go as expected, but there's still a lot of upside there. This is Floor and Ceiling. Let's break him down. A five-star prospect out of Long Beach Poly, Peyton Watson did not have the season many of us expected at UCLA, but he remains an under-the-radar wing prospect in this year's draft. At 6'8" with a wingspan around 7 feet, Watson projects as a prototypical NBA wing, but there might be more to his game. First, let's look at Peyton Watson's flashes. On the ball, he operates with long, rangy dribbles. Watson loves going between the legs and then getting into his move. Often, this can come out of a face-up on the high wing. The UCLA forward is also very comfortable going left and then back right to finish, often with spin moves. On the few occasions Watson got to handle the ball for the Bruins, the Long Beach native actually looked pretty comfortable. He played as a guard in high school, being around 6'3" as a sophomore, until going through a growth spurt which now has him slightly under 6'9" and probably still growing. Overall, I trust Watson's long-term potential bringing up the ball in transition, or maybe being something like the third pick-and-roll ball handler option on a team. P-Watt is intriguing with his ability to work using hang dribbles and long steps, all the while still learning how to use his wingspan to come up with some unorthodox finishes at the basket. Since we're on the topic of Watson putting the ball on the floor, let's break down his passing. This is another interesting, budding element of the UCLA freshman's game. Watson had 26 assists to 30 turnovers in Westwood, but the sample size is so small that I'm not reading too much into it at all. Rather, I like what P-Watt has shown attacking closeouts and generating good looks for his teammates. Watson is adept attacking a closeout within a couple dribbles, putting pressure on the rim, and finding the open man. UCLA had him doing this going left out of the corners for the most part, since Watson rarely got touches on offense. He's already pretty solid despite the low number of reps. In fact, this will probably improve when Watson's three-pointer hopefully picks up, but more on that later. However, I also want to wait and see. No one on this year's UCLA team was turnover prone at all, and Watson played so little. I have faith in his passing upside, and he has a solid diversity of passes within that small sample size, but it is early to tell. In terms of shooting, we have to be honest, all the indicators are bad. I'll get a lot more into those in just a bit, but looking at Watson's terrible efficiency throughout his season actually tells a lot of the story. So you have to squint and really buy in. Watson again has some ability attacking closeouts, this time into a short pull-up. He has a high release point that is tough to block at 6'9", especially if P-Watt can get it off in a dribble or two. His upper body looks pretty good to me, but the mechanics waist down can still fluctuate, and they could be more stable. However, any time that a wing with Watson's measurements is showing any good signs of shooting, it's worth paying attention. For him, these signs came in spot-up and catch-and-shoot situations. Now, there's no disputing that Watson had a bad season statistically during his only year at UCLA, but I think we have to take context into account. He was coming into a championship contending team, the wings were taken up by Johnny Juzang and Jaime Jaquez, and the guards were Jules Bernard and Tiger Campbell. It was tough for Watson to crack the rotation, and he had a very short leash and small role. For example, all his threes were assisted. So really, it's just a matter of how much do you believe, because it can be tough to have blind faith in a prospect with as bad of an analytical profile as Watson. As I just said, all the indicators are bad, and honestly, they are very bad. Watson shot 36% on 2-point jumpers and 23% from 3. On top of that, he only made 67% of his free throws. That's not good for a wing, and it's all very rough. Drafting Watson with a high pick is entirely a matter of really finding his flashes appealing, because at UCLA, he was super inefficient, and the Bruins' offensive rating just plummeted whenever the Long Beach Poly product was on the floor. Again though, Watson's leash was almost non-existent. He averaged under 13 minutes a game and only averaged 6 minutes in the NCAA tournament. A side note, Watson is almost 20 years old already. In other words, he's not as young as he seems, but I'm not too worried about that. I think there's still a lot of development that is yet to take place. Watt did not play varsity basketball until his junior year of high school, and as I mentioned, he had a massive growth spurt from 6'3". Much like Keegan Murray, he is very early in his development curve, but unlike Murray, Watson will not be coming back to college after his freshman year. Going back to the rim, the difficult news is that Watson was also an awful finisher at the basket this year. Watson converted on just 36% of his looks there. To quickly rewind, that's the same percentage as his 2-point jumpers. Not just that, but the volume was really low. Watson tried 45 shots at the rim, making just 16, of which half were assisted. This is bad, but interestingly enough, the numbers are very similar to Zaire Williams at Stanford. I think there are some comparisons between the two. Zaire had a better season at Stanford, which had him in the top 10 of my big board last year, but he also played in a rough context, although a different one, and struggled with efficiency despite the flashes and tools. Another big growth area for P. Watt is finishing at the basket. Watson is so raw that he is still kinda learning which angles to take and how to adjust his footwork on the move. He's a solid athlete, I think, but needs work on his coordination. Too often, Watson drives into traffic, or even more often, gets stuck in no man's land under the rim. Watson also needs to improve his ball security. Part of that is strength. P. Watt does not love to play physical, but he can drive and take it into his man's chest. His frame stands to fill out nicely, but for now, Watson lacks the strength to bump, keep the ball, and finish through his man. The California prospect is a project in every sense of the word. His pre-draft process has been kept pretty under wraps, so we're not quite sure how Watson has developed since the end of his season. But it would not surprise me if plenty of G League reps were in his future as a rookie. To be clear, that's not a bad thing. Watson absolutely needs more playing time, and I'm eager to see what he brings to the table next time we see him. Still, many things need to come around. Is the pull-up real, or is it very much theoretical? Did he just lack minutes and rhythm? If so, can he then attack closeouts, or will his finishing at the rim always be bad? Those sound simple on paper, but they're massively important questions, almost a staple of any NBA wing on offense. Still, I wonder, how would Watson have looked in a different context, like maybe Ousmane Dieng's? At UCLA, Watson was largely getting his points through effort and hustle plays. That might mean cutting off the ball where Watson has gravity because of his size and agility, or he was also pretty active on the offensive glass. I also really liked him in transition, where again, it goes back to the flashes he showed in his self-creation, operating in long strides, covering lots of ground, and forcing defenders into tough decisions using his length. He's like a gazelle in the open court, drawing fouls, playing above the rim, and I think his handle should translate to the next level, at least eventually. On defense, I feel pretty optimistic about Peyton Watson. UCLA loved using Watson to defend inbounds because he was so disruptive with his length and motor. Here, he gets the steal and is on point with his outlet pass for the bucket. At 6'8", P. Watt is actually not super long with a wingspan at just over 7 feet, but he knows how to use it. Watson is just a baller. He can blow up handoffs, sticks his hands into tricky angles, and definitely has flashes of turning defense into offense like we're seeing. Despite his lack of minutes, the Long Beach native has good steal rates and great block rates. That backs up my theory that he knows how to utilize his length and be a playmaker on defense despite how green he still is. Individually, Watson just swallows up space whenever he is moving laterally. He still has some technique issues that we will break down, but I definitely think he should be able to do that. Watson projects as a multi-positional defender who ideally will be able to defend guards and wings. If he fills out, which his frame should in my opinion, then he might be able to play some small ball 5. Certainly he has the measurements for it, and it's an interesting option if he always feels comfortable playing in a low volume role offensively. Outside of that, Watson can get down in a stance, flip his hips, and shadow the attacker. He is really nimble, and his defense is very scalable in my opinion. I like this possession here a lot. P. Watt picks up Ben Mathurin full court, he gets into him and then blows up the handoff to force the turnover. Finally, Watson takes it all the way and finishes in transition. However, Watson can still lack attention to detail. To be fair, that's natural for a 19-year-old. As I said earlier, the former McDonald's All-American had a short leash at UCLA, but he also felt the brunt of it because sometimes he just kept making mistakes on defense. Watson still has work to do off the ball in particular, both in terms of timing himself to be effective rotating and also just awareness. He can fall asleep when he's away from his man and give up buckets. Like I hinted at earlier, Watson also has room for improvement as a man defender. In the long term, I think he should be fine in this area because not only does he blatantly have the tools to at least be a solid defender, Watson has also shown enough flashes to where I believe the potential. Still, this is also something that he must take care of in the short term in order to guarantee himself minutes, particularly if his offense takes a bit to iron out. Broadly speaking, it can be easy to beat Watson off the dribble, which shouldn't be the case at all. One of the biggest things to me is that Watson gives up his top foot too easily. Let's slow down and zoom in here. Here, he hits Watson with the first jab step. P-Watt is interested, but he does not fully bite. On the second one though, he does. I paused here to show the exact moment Watson gives up his top foot. The attacker then drives and finishes past him far too easily. So overall, the question once again comes down to how much of a believer you are in potential. If you're a glass half full type of person, then Watson is brimming with upside at 6'8" and a potentially versatile two-way skill set. But objectively right now, P-Watt is a big time project who seemingly remains quite far away from fulfilling said potential. Peyton Watson is a project in every sense of the word, and honestly, if you told me right now that he is 2 years away from ever being able to meaningfully contribute to an NBA team, I wouldn't be that surprised. He will be 20 by the time the season starts, so youth is not entirely on his side, which seems a little ridiculous to say for a 20-year-old, but that's just how the NBA draft is. Still, like I said in the video, I do wonder, how would Watson have looked like if he played in a team or in a role somewhat more like Ousmane Dieng? Unlike Dieng in New Zealand though, Watson didn't get to play through his mistakes, therefore 13 minutes a game, high 20s from 3, mid 30s from everywhere else around the floor. You look at the numbers and Watson doesn't come out looking good at all. So really you have to squint, you have to look at the flashes, but I do think that there is something there. A 6'8" rangy wing, maybe not the longest, but still a wingspan over 7 feet. Pretty solid athlete, fluid handling the ball, multi-positional versatility on defense. So with Watson, there's certainly lots of stuff there to work with. And as you get towards the later first round, that early second sort of range, I could see a team like the Toronto Raptors being highly interested in him at number 33. As always, if you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like, make sure to leave a comment telling me what you think of Peyton Watson. And if you enjoyed the video, if you enjoyed the channel, if you want to see more content like this, make sure to subscribe. Take care, and I'll see you guys next time.